Did you hear that? That was the sound of Apple snapping its fingers and killing half the bezels in its product universe. iPhone went first, then Apple Watch, now iPad Pro. And yeah, somewhere out there, iMac is whispering,
I don't feel so good.
We've always been at war with bezels. They've held the components we've needed to have the devices we've wanted, but they've also held back the displays we've always dreamed of, the ones that would truly set our devices free. We've waited for it, we've lusted after it, and now, insert finally, we have it. But as with all good plot twists, killing half the bezels on the iPad Pro is just part one. Part 2 kicks off with Face ID and a true depth camera, a monstrous A12X Bionic chipset, and updated speakers and mics, all in a design that both returns iPad to its roots and reboots it for the future, including an all-new Smart Keyboard Folio and yeah, Apple Pencil number 2. But as is increasingly evident with each new product Apple updates, the future demands a price. iPad Pro now starts at US $799 for the screen-stretched 11-inch model and US $999 for the casing-shaved 12.9-inch model. That's $1,000 a slab for the bigger one, and before you add more storage or gigabit LTE, and a big ask for anything that doesn't deliver significant bang for every one of those bucks. Hi, I'm Rene Ritchie. Welcome back to Vector. So glad you could join me. I've been using the 12.9-inch 1TB version of the new iPad Pro for almost a week, and I've got so many thoughts to share. Let's do this. Liquid Retina started with the iPad Pro. Sure, iPhone XR, small, agile, and no doubt poised to be ludicrously more profitable, managed to demo and ship first. But the technology that lets Apple push LCD panels with their LED backlights edge to edge, rounded corner to rounded corner, with all the anti-aliasing and sub-pixel masking that involves, feels even more at home on the iPad Pro. Part of that is the sheer size. iPad has always been iMacs to the iPhone. The other part is the lack of a notch. Because of its size, the relative bezels that remain are large enough not just to give you some non-display area to hold on to, but to completely envelop the true depth camera system that compels a notch on similarly full-screen iPhones. The result is asymmetry and uniformity, not constrained by orientation or marred by forehead or chin, or compromised by potentially point-of-failure mechanical camera choochers. It just is. I'm guessing Apple could delete even more bezel here if it wanted to, at least to iPhone XR levels, but I'm not sure I want them to. The current palm and unintentional touch rejection is, no bullshit, a machine-learned miracle at this point. But there's just something about keeping a margin on a page or a frame on a window that makes it feel more comfortable, more human. The display density, which maintains the original Retina 2012 iPad standard of 264 ppi, still looks fine. Individual pixels disappear just like they're supposed to for normal vision at normal viewing distances. When and if Apple goes to OLED for iPad Pro, and there are uniformity and other quality issues that still need solving before that can happen, if Pentile-style diamond subpixel arrangements are still the norm, no doubt that'll get revisited. Until then, dear spec sheet junkies, don't make me make another resolution explainer. Please. TLDR, like with the old megapixel myth that compromised cameras for a generation, it's not about the quantity of pixels, it's about the quality. And the quality of pixels on the iPad Pro display is terrific. They're once again DCI P3, which means you get the much wider color gamut for richer reds and more vivid greens. But at 600 nits, it's still not quite bright enough for full HDR, high dynamic range, like the over 700 nits iPhone X series, at least not completely. If you're sitting in the pitch dark, the color space and brightness will get you most of the way there. If you're sitting out in the light, not so much. Some people and television vendors quibble about all this. Apple seems to have simply settled on calling it EDR, Extended Dynamic Range, instead. Now, you can still download or stream HDR10 and Dolby Vision formats, and it'll do a bang-up job of displaying them, regardless of where or how you're watching. But the only way to get what everyone agrees is full-on proper HDR is to use the new USB-C port, more on that in a cool minute, to output HDR10 or Dolby Vision to a full-on proper HDR panel that supports them. Apple's doing all the color management and individual color calibration you'd expect here as well, so iPad Pro looks dead accurate. So much so that, like iPhone XR, it can be hard to tell Apple LCD from Apple OLED in anything but the deep blacks and the off-axis shifts. And yeah, that's still impressive. Most impressive. There's also a new anti-reflective coating that Apple designed to both minimize glare, including over the true depth camera, more on that in a slightly warmer minute, better than any previous iPad, and Apple says any other display on a portable. It'll also apparently hold up to heavy-duty multi-touch and pencil use better than ever, and that I'm very much looking forward to testing long term. The result is interesting. Light is almost matted out, and light sources, rather than blooming across the glass, seem almost locked into it. You can still blow it out if you pick the absolute worst angle and conditions to use it at, but you have to try harder or just be significantly more screwed to have it happen. True Tone, which is Apple's technology for matching the color temperature of ambient lighting, so whites stay looking paper white and not cold blue or hot yellow as you move from inside to outside or incandescent to fluorescent lighting, has also been updated with a newer, more sensitive sensor, so the transitions are supposedly faster and more precise. I couldn't really tell the difference, but I never found True Tone to be slow or ham-fisted in any way to begin with. ProMotion, which debuted on iPad Pro last year and remains exclusive to it this year, can dynamically lower the refresh rate to save power when nothing is moving on the screen. It can also stay at 24 frames per second for a cinematic experience, or ramp up to a full 120 Hz for buttery smooth scrolling, or whatever's beyond buttery smooth, clarified, buttery, ghee, I don't know. And yeah, like True Tone, which has now trickled across the iPhone and Mac lineups, I want it everywhere. The end result is not as overwhelming as a projection TV or even 5K iMac, or as close and intimate as a 10 class iPhone, but it's truer than ever to that original vision of iPad being tabula rasa, in your hands, as you sit up to work or recline back to relax. It's that feeling of a deeply personal machine that, at a swipe or tap, can be anything the web or an app makes it, only now there's much less around the edges to remind you that it's a machine. The new iPad Pro looks like the original iPad had a baby with an iPhone 5. That's the kind of retro future design cues Apple is playing off here. What little bezel remains doesn't gently curve, doesn't chamfer, doesn't taper, it just falls right off the side. And you know what? I'm strangely okay with that. Much as I was hoping we'd finally have a unified design language across all of Apple's iOS and derived devices, this is way more interesting, almost industrial, and a marked return to the Braun and Leica-like cues of almost a decade ago. It moves the design language forward again by kind of taking it back, which I'm pretty sure is all shades of dodgy cheat. But whatever, it totally works, and I'd love to see a next generation retro future iPhone in this style as well. Now, I do feel like Apple's industrial design department is still trolling us by keeping the sleep, wake, or on-off button, or whatever you want to call it, on the top instead of moving it to the side where the iPhone has been for going on half a decade now. Because of the difference, I still get it wrong and hit the volume up all the time. Here, I feel consistency would be a user benefit, even if I don't know what you do with the volume buttons to keep them from being buried by the Smart Keyboard on the other side. Because hey, I identify problems, not find solutions. Beneath the volume button, centered along the same side, is the new magnetic connector for the new Apple Pencil. More on that in a bit. It doesn't replace the old Smart connector. That was on the other side where one of the new microphones has taken its place. On the LTE model, there are 6 antenna lines around the sides and 2 long curved ones on the back, top and bottom. I don't love them, but I don't mind them, especially with how they fit into the new industrial aesthetic. The new Smart connector, still with power, data, and ground leads, is now on the back, below the Apple logo, near the bottom. It might seem like a strange place, but separating it from the actual point of keyboard connection means you now can connect the keyboard at different angles without having to have multiple equal and opposite Smart connectors on every accessory. What's gone is a 3.5mm headphone jack. Yeah, deleting the bezels also deleted the jack that was previously cased inside them. Pushing the LCD and LED backlights so close to the edge and making the device as thin as they did left zero room for a big old plug. Unlike with iPhone 7, where Apple included a 3.5mm adapter in the box to ease the transition, no such accommodation has been made for iPad. I'm of the belief that every time you take something away, you have to give something else in return, even if only temporarily to aid in that transition. But the counter arguments are, first, Apple never included headphones with the iPad, so there's no reason to include an adapter for them. And second, not everyone would use it, so it's wasteful and literally landfilling to include it anyway. So, okay, maybe. And pro audio gear users and people who need it for accessibility can certainly hunt down and buy their own adapters and splitters, but it's more money and more work to solve a problem they never had to solve before. So let's have a little empathy, can we? The 4-speaker system Apple debuted with the original iPad Pro, the one that turns as you turn the iPad and keeps both left and right clear, highs and mids on top, and bass everywhere, regardless of how much you turn it, didn't get similarly sacrificed to the gods of bezel deletion. Instead, they evolved. There's now a separate tweeter and woofer in each speaker. That's 4, count them, 4 tweeters and woofers per iPad. Like I mentioned with the HomePod, Apple's acoustic team is just absolutely crushing it and on every level for every product right now. And while there's still stiff competition for computational photography, like with chipsets and video, Apple's only real competition for this kind of audio feels like dedicated high-end speaker companies. And if Apple keeps investing like they have for the last few years, I wonder for how long even that'll be true. The unibody shell is still Apple's custom aluminum alloy, sides and back. No glass, because despite a few attempts over the years and for a variety of reasons, inductive charging for tablets just isn't a thing yet. You can get it in your choice of silver and space gray, both with black bezels. White bezels like gold and rose gold options have been buried with the 3.5mm headphone jack. Previously, the smaller iPad Pro was available in just those kinds of finishes, just like the MacBook and the new MacBook Air, and even the iPhone XS and XS Max, but not any of the machines dubbed Pro. Not anymore. And yeah, I filed a bug report with Apple, expected behavior, gold and or rose gold, but I'm not expecting it to clear screening. The sizes have changed both subtly and radically. There are still 2, but the bigger one kept its 12.9-inch screen and shaved off its casing, while the smaller one kept its casing size and expanded the screen to 11 inches. It's enough that I saw more than a few people confuse the 12.9 for the 11. If you're torn trying to decide between them, my advice remains the same. If you want an iPad Pro instead of a notebook, get the 12.9. If you want it in addition to a notebook, get the 11. With every successive review, I feel like I should have to explain Face ID less and less. But then I see things like OnePlus 6T reviews, where people breathlessly express their admiration for the tiny teardrop notch, while simultaneously lavishing praise on its super fast face unlock, never once bothering to mention how it can be fooled by anything north of a Rorschach test. I exaggerate, but only slightly. Because when Face ID first came out, papers, magazines, blogs, and YouTubers spent hours and dollars trying to spoof it with everything from Hollywood quality makeup and effects, I want to say to just shy of face-off stunts or Hannibal masks. And now it feels like no claims get tested anymore and everything is just yada yada except for that spec sheet and those price complaints. Now, I'm not saying anyone should go easier on Apple. I'm saying exactly the opposite of that. We need to go hard and on everyone. You want a smaller notch? Well, so do I. But what are you giving up to get it? And is it worth the trade-off? Hannibal masked me that on your facepalm thumbnail. So yeah, Face ID remains Face ID. Like Touch ID, it has some limitations. Instead of moisture and gloves, it's direct sunlight and infrared blocking sunglasses. But in most cases, and with most glasses, you won't have a problem. It's not as good with really young kids or really close family members that have very similar facial geometry, but it's much better with non-relatives than Touch ID ever was. For iPad Pro, there are a few new Face ID features worth mentioning. While you have to set it up in portrait, just like iPhone, once you're set up, it also works in landscape. Unlike iPhone. For the iPhone X, in order to make it rock solid for launch, Apple kept the neural network model and training simple and optimized the camera system for just one goal, to nail the recognition in portrait. For iPad Pro, which people don't just use horizontally or vertically, but has no real up or down, no concept of left or right, straight up or angled, in the hands or on the table, Apple knew it couldn't keep Face ID so constrained. So the team captured hundreds of millions of new facial geometry samples and created a more complex model with more complex training. Yeah, training. Nobody codes the stuff anymore. Nobody can. Brilliantly, terrifyingly, it's more like teaching a pet to do tricks. Or as I like to explain it, Tinder for machines. You, not you. You, not you. Not you. You, not you. Not you. You. Hot dog. And it works, whether you're holding it upright or sideways, or have it on your lap or on a table, even if the true depth camera is on top or on the bottom in portrait orientation, or on the left and right in landscape, it just works. Especially with the new tap to wake. There's still no raise to wake, but you can tap the screen with either your finger or the Apple Pencil, or just tap the Smart Keyboard. And that's a pretty great advance in just a year and a half, and I, like everyone else, hopes it comes to the iPhone soon as well. About the only problem I have with it is if I'm holding it in landscape, I'm almost always covering the true depth camera with my palm. Apple took that into consideration by adding a camera covered alert to the Face ID system, poking you to move your mid off. Absent adding one or more additional redundant price increasing true depth sensors to the other edges, I don't know how to solve it all the time for everyone, but it is extra overhead for me. Based on my own use cases though, mounting the true depth camera in landscape instead of portrait would suit me even better. Even for portrait selfies, portrait lighting, and depth control, all of which now come with the new iPad Pro. It all works just like the iPhone XS, capturing real depth data and combining it with segmentation masking, computer vision, and machine learning to separate you from the background, and has all the bells and whistles as well, including Smart HDR with the recent bug fix, so they're sharper, cooler, and quite often make me better looking than nature seems to feel I have any right to look. It also works for Animoji and Memoji, and in a particularly clever way. Because the camera is almost always offset, Apple uses machine learning to compensate and apply the emoji and Memoji correctly, regardless of how off-angle your face may be. You can use Animoji, Memoji, and AR stickers in iMessage and FaceTime, including the just-shipped Group FaceTime feature, which lets you jump between text, voice, and video with up to 32 of your closest friends, family, or colleagues. And that's great for early morning meetings, where I can now just throw on a Memoji so no one has to experience this face before coffee. We've had a lot of this on iPhone for just over a year already, but somehow the big screen makes for bigger fun. I mean productivity. Definitely productivity. People used to make fun of other people taking photos and shooting videos on iPads. It just wasn't taken seriously, not even by Apple, who kept the iPad camera languishing far behind the iPhone camera, until the 9.7-inch iPad Pro debuted back in the spring of 2016. That's because pros know the value of large viewfinders, and the new iPad Pros have the biggest, barest viewfinders Apple has ever made. The rest of the camera story is more win some, lose some. The thinner casing means the camera can only fit 5 elements instead of 6 elements in the lens like previous generation Pros. And it also means it can no longer fit optical image stabilization, OIS. To compensate, at least somewhat, Apple has its new image signal processor, ISP, tied right into the neural engine. Both are parts of the A12X processor and are used to deliver what Apple calls Smart HDR. The system buffers 4 frames ahead, interleaves underexposures for highlight detail, and when you take your shot, simultaneously shoots a long exposure to pull even more detail out of the shadows. Can the new computational photography make up for the lack of OIS? Kinda. At least well enough that my non-expert eyes can't see a huge difference in anything other than really low light. Would it be worth a bigger camera bump to get the extra element and OIS back? Probably not, given how bumpy it would make it, and certainly not in the near future, given how fast Apple Silicon is evolving. Apple also says the cameras have been better calibrated for AR, augmented reality. I thought it worked really well before, so I'll have to take their word for it. But maybe it'll help me save a few more Bat Caves or Ninjago castles from burning down. The heart of the new iPad Pro and the engine is the Apple A12X. Before it came out, I imagined it would be like the iPhone XS on gamma rays or Hulk serum. It's both. It's got an 8-core Fusion CPU with 4 efficiency and 4 performance cores, and a new controller smart enough to dispatch between them and even fire everything when it really has to. Apple claims that's enough to make iPad Pro faster than 92% of portable PCs sold in the last year, including Intel Core i7 models. Early Geekbench reaction has borne that out, and while that might surprise some, it shouldn't. Apple's platform technologies team has only one mission: to make the fastest chips possible for any given device constraints on Earth. That's it, and they take it beyond seriously. Given that Apple has stepped on the accelerator hard, just as Intel has finally stopped spinning out by hitting the water barrels, the only real surprise will be how far Apple can take its custom silicon, and how soon. But you know, just between us, if I was any processor with a lake in its codename, I'd be quaking in my rose gold 3.5mm bezel about to be deleted boots. The GPU is 7 cores, and Apple says it can deliver Xbox One S caliber graphics. That's beyond great for big screen mobile gamers, but also for high-end creatives and pros. It's now the biggest pedal for Apple's metal. The neural engine is the same 8-core design as iPhone XS and XR. Not only does it accelerate all the machine learning and computer vision tasks on the iPad Pro, it figures out which processing unit will best handle any task at any given time that needs being handled. And it's all efficient enough for Apple to keep on claiming 10 hours of battery life on the new iPad Pros. And of course, to test them out, I had to take both this year's and last year's model out on a Pokemon Go Gengar raid day. And yeah, they both did just fine. Memory is 4 GB for the 64GB, 256GB, and 512GB storage versions, but it jumps to 6 GB for the 1TB option. And yeah, that's a lot for an iPad, but still not a lot for a computer. I'd love to see the kind of magic Adobe is incanting to open huge PSD, never mind PSB files, even in beta. Wi-Fi remains the same, but LTE, if you fork over for the option, is now gigabit class, up to 29 bands, all the bandwidth, plus Bluetooth is now 5.0. It looks like CDMA Rev A and Rev B, the old Verizon and Sprint data carriers, is finally dead on the new iPad Pros as well. If for some reason you want it, you'll need to stick with last year's 10.5-inch iPad Pro. Please don't want it. Far more important is the death of Lightning on iPad Pro. Apple originally went to Lightning for the new design languages on iPhone, iPad, and iPad mini because it needed a smaller, thinner, smarter connector, and USB-C was still years away from rolling out. Apple stuck with Lightning because no one wants the hassle of multiple connector transitions with anything less than a decade between them. But now, scarcely more than half a decade later, here Apple is transitioning again, at least for the iPad Pro, and this time to the very USB-C Apple couldn't wait for before. The reason seems simple. Apple wants iPad Pro to be able to do things Lightning and its ecosystem simply can't. It wasn't about consistency, it's all about capability. With USB-C that supports USB 3.1 Gen 2, it can handle up to 10 gigabits per second. That's more than enough to pull high-resolution photos and videos at a highly accelerated rate, to drive up to a 5K display, or pretty much anything, even multiple things. The only caveat is iOS doesn't support all USB-C accessories natively, so if you want something like a storage device, you'll need to find an app that does support it. iPad Pro can also giveth power, much as it as always taketh it. If you have a USB-C to Lightning cable sold separately, you can use your iPad Pro to charge an iPhone, or a Siri remote, or even a Magic Mouse if you really want to. But you don't really want to, right? It's a smart move to make, and not just because suddenly all modern Mac chargers and peripherals can theoretically be used with iPad Pro. Apple has vacillated a lot about whether or not iPad Pro is a computer or something decidedly post-computer, and for good reason. We want all the functionality, but we don't want all the complexity and the baggage that comes with it. In this case though, there's no reason to fuss about it or overthink it. USB-C lets iPad Pro grow up, and in a way that's only as complicated as you or your workflows need it to be. The new Apple Pencil has the same tip and core technology as the original, but just about everything else has changed. There's no cap on the back to lose anymore, and no lightning plug either. It charges inductively now by magnetically piggybacking right into the side of the iPad Pro. It uses a series of magnets carefully arranged with alternating poles to force precise alignment, and when it gets it, it locks into place with this amazingly satisfying AirPods-esque thunk. And yeah, it's every bit as addictive to do, repeatedly. I gotta stop. I'm still worried about the strength of the connection though. It absolutely doesn't just fall off at random, but it can be knocked off, and since it sits up there outside Apple's Folio case, all naked and exposed, I always make sure to put my entire hand over it while carrying the iPad, just in case. Once it's connected, it pairs and starts to charge. It can still rapid charge just like before if you need a quick boost after a period of heavy use. The only drawback is that connecting to a new iPad Pro is the only way to charge the new Apple Pencil. You can store it there, and Apple will power manage it so it stays charged without any appreciable loss of battery health, and you can leave it lying around and the sensors will detect it's not in use and put it into an ultra-low power mode to save charge. But you can't just pick up a random cable anymore or a charge pad and juice it up. So yeah, just leave it on your iPad Pro. One side of the new Apple Pencil is flat to facilitate the connection. The feeling is enough to make me wonder what a fully hexagonal Apple Pencil would feel like. Maybe even more like a real pencil. The exterior isn't glossy anymore either, and that makes it easier to hold onto. It almost feels as much like chalk as it does a proper pencil. There's a new gesture area that wraps all the way around the new Apple Pencil, just above the tip. Double tap it in Notes, for example, and you can switch between drawing and erasing, or the current and previous tool. Apps can offer their own options too, like the zoom in, zoom out Photoshop has demonstrated. It's stealthier and less tactily annoying than a convenience key, and faster than flipping a real school-style pencil or old-school stylus around to switch modes. How useful it ends up being will really depend on how apps implement it. So far though, so great. If you were hoping to use your old Apple Pencil with the new iPad, bad news. It can neither charge it nor pair with it. You have to get the new Pencil, and the new Pencil only works with the new iPad Pro. It can't be used with the previous ones. I'm pretty much keyboard proof. It's like Fortnite for me. Drop me into a new keyboard zone, and within a few minutes, half an hour or more at most, I'll be happily typing away, getting stuff done, not a care in the Switch or travel world. So I was fine with the previous Smart Keyboard. I used it all the time. At home, in the studio, at coffee shops and malls, in meetings, on planes and trains, everywhere. In my humble opinion, the cloth-molded Smart Keyboard single-handedly redeemed taffeta from generations of bad formal attire. Plus, it's spill-proof and doesn't end up looking like a college dorm carpet covered and discolored by Cheeto debris and sweat acid after a few months of use like some other fabrics do. So I end up liking this new version both better and worse. The keys feel bolder and punchier, and not just because I've beaten down my previous keyboard over the last 18 odd months. And I like that I can set it to stand either straighter up or incline it further back depending on whether I'm using it on a table or my lap. Using it on my lap has been great. I've already written thousands and thousands of words on it just exactly that way, and it's been far sturdier and more stable than the previous version. It's when I fold it back that things get weird. Because unlike the previous version and its more complex folding pattern, this one simply, really just folds back. And that means instead of the soft fabric lining being exposed, you're left with your keys hanging out. Of course, the keys are smart enough to turn themselves off, but they don't go away. I can feel them all the time, like bubble wrap, just aching to be tapped. I do forget about it after a while, but I'd still rather not have anything there to forget about. I'm always going to remember Steve Jobs sitting on that keynote stage, sitting in that Le Corbusier chair, going so deliberately through all the features of the just revealed iPad, showing them all off for the very first time. All that technology, all in that one glass and aluminum slab, becoming anything he wanted it to be at the tap of a link or the opening of an app. But it wasn't everything it could be. Not yet. Not back then. It was the first attempt, the hint, the starting point that showed everyone inside Apple and out just how far it could go. A tabula rasa, an infinity screen, technology made transparent. And this new iPad Pro, well, it still isn't there. Not yet. But it's just as obviously the biggest step forward since the original. Bigger than iPad 2, bigger than iPad Air, bigger than the first Pro. And even though it's nowhere nearly transparent yet, it's technology made even more translucent than ever. And not just as a window into apps and the web, now it's an engine for artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision, augmented reality, and more. And if you want to find out about all of that, check out Brilliant. As great as it is watching videos, if you really want to learn about all the new technologies coming our way, you have to get down and solve real problems. Brilliant does an excellent job at this. It's a really cool website and app that helps you learn by solving interesting problems in science and mathematics, in algorithms, in artificial intelligence. And each of the courses starts off kind of easy and fun, yeah, and then gets more and more challenging as you master the concepts. Check them out at brilliant.org/vector. Thanks, Brilliant, and thanks to all of you for supporting the show. Now, the only thing left to talk about is the price. It's higher than ever. Bluntly, that's all that's going to matter to some people, especially those who could stretch to meet the old prices but simply can't make the new ones. That's what Apple's sacrificing by pushing iPad and other devices so far, so aggressively fast. They're not just making iPads more expensive, they're making more expensive iPads down to the component level, using custom processes and literally paying their way into bringing technology to market sooner than otherwise would be possible. To mitigate it, Apple is releasing lower priced devices like the 9.7-inch iPad and keeping around previous generation devices like the 10-inch iPad Pro. But at the top end, they're making the case that these new devices, like the new iPad Pro, offers value far beyond the price, including all the additional free, often pro-level training Apple makes available at their retail stores. And yeah, I don't think those announcements being made side by side at the same event are any coincidence. Opening the box gives you access to far more resources and a far larger ecosystem than the device itself, just like turning on the screen gives you access to far more than just a bunch of pixels. Some people will say the prices are too goddamn high, others that you get what you pay for. Ultimately, Apple will charge you a lot, but believes they give you far more for your dollar than anybody else. Regardless, you're still bound to Apple's software and services. And while apps like Real Photoshop and AutoCAD are coming, and Office has been around for a while, Google hasn't made anywhere nearly the effort, and other desktop apps, even Apple's own Xcode, just aren't here yet. So yeah, you'll need to decide for yourself. But my conclusion, my advice is this. If you just need or want an iPad, just get an iPad. Apple has good ones, compatible with the original Pencil, going for just a few $100 now. But if you want or need more, if you want or need something that combines raw power and absolute portability better than anything else on the market, then get the new iPad Pro. At least that's what I think, but now I want to hear what you think. Hit like, hit subscribe, and then hit up the comments below and let me know. And thank you so much for watching.